Okay, it is 10:30, so I think what we'll do is we will just jump right in. Looks like we only have 27. I know some of those are actually staffs meeting larger groups, and we do have other people that will be joining on shortly. So hopefully you're all in the right place. GSCS, Edsby for secondary high school teachers. Um, yeah, I'm Marco Bay. Most of you know me. I've had the pleasure of working with many of you, and also in my role, have had a lot of opportunity to work with many of you one on one, which is great. So, welcome to Edsby. You've probably been hearing a lot about Edsby, or maybe hearing of things and wanting to know more. I will kind of guide you through everything you need to know to get started. Essentially, we are still in the pilot phase for high school. We have three high schools piloting. We have St. Joe's, we have Bethlehem, we have Bishop Murray. Right now, each of those look very different depending on which school you're at. Bishop Murray is currently at an all staff capacity, where Bethlehem and St. Joe's are focusing right now on their advisory groups, but we're going to be looking to opening that up a little bit more as we learn more and get more of the kinks worked out with Edsby themselves. So if you've never heard of Edsby, great, you're in the right place. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing this tab and I'm going to share my screen so it's a little bit easier to see everything. Okay, so you should be seeing my whole screen right about now. There we go. Okay, first things first, a little bit about what Edsby actually is, as well as kind of our use of it moving forward. So, you may have heard many different terms: Fujitsu, Aspen, My School Sask, Edsby, maybe others as well. Moving forward, the regular classroom teacher will only ever need to know Edsby moving forward. Um, Essentially, there's a company called Fujitsu who owns a program, or a company called Aspen, which makes a product called My School Sask, which is the provincial student information system, SIS, for the province. So the province has moved to a common SIS for all the school divisions in Saskatchewan. And we are one of those having to move to it next year. Along with that, we're also looking for a gradebook. As many of you know, Maplewood is pretty much fit for the pit, and we are barely keeping it alive. So, unfortunately, now is kind of the worst time to push you into any new product. But this product is pretty great, and I think you'll see a lot of big benefits to it. So moving forward, a teacher will only ever need to know Edsby. Edsby will be our communication hub. It will be our grade book, and it'll be our attendance. No more jumping through multiple programs. One program will do it all. It has a very Facebook-like feel. You're going to see a little bit right now. I'll show you kind of my environment. Very Facebook-like. So it's going to be quite familiar to people, quite easy to navigate, quite intuitive. It also comes with an app as well. So you can have an Edsby app on your phone. There's two different apps. There's an Edsby app, which will give you essentially this layout, and you'll be able to do things like attendance on it or record assessments. And there's also a capture app, which will allow students or yourself to actually capture assessments and tag them to students and outcomes and whatnot. So both are valuable. You don't need to use either of them right now, but just kind of letting you know what's out there. So before we get too deep into where to find it, you might want to take a look at some of the resources we have available. If you go to your portal, you might see that there's quite a few new tiles. I definitely suggest you check them out. This math and science help would be one. If you're a math and science teacher, definitely check out. You may have heard about it. To support some of our students at home learning. The Student Tech Hub might be relevant to you. I'm sure you've seen this Teacher Resource Hub. That's kind of what we developed early on with all the Google resources. And one thing we're trying to do now is something similar with Edsby. So Edsby Resources is right here. You'll see there it's quite sparse. We need to add more content to it. Quite a bit of these videos will also relate to different tasks we'll be completing today. So right now I'm kind of focusing on the Edsby Gradebook in high school, and I've created a document, still work in process, If you clicked on this middle one, it's going to get you to that main presentation I had up right here. What we'll do today is I'll get you into the environment as well as kind of show you some of the features you'll run into the first time you turn it on, as well as setting up your classes. And we're going to do a deep dive into setting up a gradebook. Obviously, it's going to be a ton of information coming at you, and you'll be overwhelmed. But for your purposes, I've started recording the session. The session will be recorded. I'll upload it to our YouTube page and make sure it's available on that page as well. So within our time today, I will be specifically focusing on the new Foundations of Math course, which I think was previously 2 courses. Now they're combined again. All units are in a single class. I've been kind of partnering with one of the teachers here at the board office to make it somewhat relevant, so I wasn't just making things up. If you follow this guide, you should have no problem being able to create a gradebook as well as some of your weighting. I think I heard a ding from the chat, perhaps. Just one thing I would say, just hold your chat questions until later on. I'm going to hopefully get you out of here within an hour. I'll try to run through this all in an hour, but I'll stay till noon to answer any questions. So how to find this document, you would go to Portal, click on the Edsby supports. I'm on page 5 here, high school gradebook right in the middle. Most of these videos right now are just the overview documents right from Edsby themselves, which are quite good, but I find they're not specific to our environment. So I'll be replacing these and creating many, many more that are directly related to our environment. But what I want to do is actually get you into the environment and show you a little bit about what it is. So the first thing is just finding how do you get to Edsby. And it's as simple as going to gscs.edsby.com. I'm going to just log out here so you can see what that process is. You will jump into a page that looks like this. We are so conditioned to logging in with our username and password, but when you try that, it will give you an error. I'm not even going to do it. You have to click on this Office 365 button. If you're logged into a GSS computer, it will authenticate you based on being logged in. And you'll see there, Marco Bay, top right-hand corner, that is me logged in. I can also just log out, just like that. You will be able to, anybody in our school division as of right now has access to the Edsby environment by clicking on the Office 365 button. There will be a portal tile coming. We kind of held off because we didn't want too many people in the environment until we had an opportunity to provide some training. So you will see in the portal, or you can just type in gscs.edsby.com, click on the O365 button. Do not use this login. It doesn't work for our environment, and we'll go from there. Back to this document. The first time you jump into the environment, you'll get different notifications, different pop-ups. I suggest you turn on notifications. That will allow you to find out if somebody's messaged you or sent some communication that way. It will also do a fairly good job of introducing the environment. So I definitely suggest, if you have some time available, go through these videos. There's usually only one per section, and you can always get to them later by clicking on that little question mark in the top right-hand corner. What we're going to do, though, is jump into the class setup and show you a little bit about the environment and how you might want to use it here moving forward. Excuse me. I'm going to jump into a demo environment. You do not have access to this demo environment. It's a little bit different. This allows me to basically set up teachers and classes and students that are not associated with our actual students, protecting their privacy and whatnot. So this environment, it says demo.gss. Make sure you won't be able to access that. I know we've had some questions. Teachers, administrators would like to have access to things like test students, test parents, test teachers, test administrators. And unfortunately, we don't have access to that. I have very limited accounts, so we don't have enough to provide that for everybody. But you will be able to log in with your GSCS account. You'll be able to see your courses. There may or may not be students already associated with that, especially if you're in any one of the pilot high schools. But if not, that will be something that we're working on as we've kind of worked through some of the bugs. So I've just logged into this environment. Top right-hand corner will always tell you who the person is. This teacher is Zach Larson. And you can see here on the left-hand side, here's his classes. He's also part of the Greater Saskatoon Catholic Schools at the top, as well as SK High School. That would be replaced with your high school. So Bethlehem High School, and that would be GSCS. So you'll be able to see information from the division level as well as the school level. Up here in the middle is called the River of News. So that's where we could post announcements. These could be coming from the division themselves, or it could be a school-based thing. So you could have the SRC posting announcements, posting resources, posting videos, things like that. It's all a controlled environment, just like how we have Google set up or Microsoft. It's all within our privacy bubble. It is a communication tool as well as a gradebook tool and attendance tool. So another question you might get is, are we switching from Google Classroom to this? And not necessarily. I will show you how this could replace some features, but it certainly wouldn't be forcing you to move. There are features, though, in which you should absolutely start playing with as soon as possible, because they will make your lives much easier as you go through. That being gradebook and attendance. Reporting your attendance is actually incredibly easy. From this main page, it will look at the time and it will associate that with a specific period. So right now, it would be the time for my period 1 in this environment. All I would do is click attendance. These are all fictional students, not our actual students. Generally, if they're mostly present, I can just click present and see, okay, Otto is absent, Chevy is absent as well. You could also do late. So if I put the student to late, I could type in whatever I wanted here. I can also specify a specific time. And then I would just click share with the office, and I've taken my attendance. You'll also see if I've changed this to present, I can also select a time. Maybe I had mistaken him. He's actually there. I can save it and it will change that. Okay, and so you'll get kind of a running tally here. On the right-hand side, you would be able to get some more visuals. Obviously, I haven't taken attendance too many times in this class, but it will give you an alert. You'll see flags, color-coded primarily. Red is usually at a certain threshold, maybe 10 absences or lates or higher, and 5 might be a warning that you might need to look at some sort of a intervention for that student. So it's really as easy as clicking the button, or you can do that within a class. I'll show you how to do that as well. If, for example, I know maybe this Friday we're doing an outdoor activity and I needed to actually mark the whole class absent, I could create a planned absent for all of my class members in the future as well. You can do attendance should be taken. You can do the reason, repeating, comments, anything, which is quite helpful. Parents and students will also be in this app quite heavily. So we've been asking for a parent-student portal for quite some time. This is finally the tool that will allow us to do that. One thing to know, though, is teachers have absolute control as to what is shared with students and parents. So even though we will have a gradebook and we will have a portal, that doesn't mean to say anything you post in the gradebook is automatically available to students and parents. It is only available when you share it. And I know that might not make sense to you until we actually get in, but I'll show you a little bit about how that can be relevant to your world. One more thing about the groups. I'm just going to go into my environment. There are groups in Edsby, and the groups can actually be quite powerful depending on how you want to use them. Right now, we have pilot groups where we can ask questions, post resources. I'm also testing out sports groups where we can actually send forms out through groups. So potentially we can do all of our sports forms in this. It's something we're testing, as well as all the groups can have calendars associated with them, and any calendar associated with a student will auto feed to that student and that parent. So for example, if I have a basketball team and a drama production, and we both have groups, anything added to those calendars will be automatically added to the calendars of the student, as well as the parent associated with that student. That would actually be quite helpful for us moving forward as well. So one of my groups, for example, we can add different moderators. We could also tell who's been active what. We have libraries of different resources, images, and just an area to share content. So we can do files, videos, pretty much anything. Back to my demo environment, I'm going to just jump into my Foundation Math 10 Period 1 class. You can see here that the report card is red. We've just done that to show you what the report card could actually look like. You would not see the report card button until closer in the term, as well as it probably won't be red. Red usually indicates something is late. Within my calendar here, you could see that anything due relatively soon will show up in my calendar on the right hand side, as well as kind of give me an idea of anything I have moving forward. So that's a little bit about just kind of the landing page. I can also click on the full page calendar and you can see like all the different things I might be subscribed to. For example, here you can see that some of my classes are here and you'll be able to see everything that's due, all my quizzes, all my assignments, everything like that. If I clicked on sync, I would actually be able to copy that into my iCal calendar. So if I have like an iPhone, it could sync to my home calendar or any other calendar. It does the same with Microsoft as well. So we'll jump into this teacher's period 1 class, FM10. Again, this is one I've pre-populated. This is what it might look like later in the semester. So kind of busy. There's a lot of things going on. Anything I post as far as assessments will show up in your feed. Think of this just like Facebook. The feed is basically kind of letting people know things I've done. One thing to take note of though is make sure when you're adding anything that you pay special attention to the dates. The dates for everything is essentially how things are organized in the gradebook. So if I have assignment 1, 2, and 3, I would want to make sure that I actually am aware of when I want those assigned or due, because if I put them all due on the same day, it won't organize them chronologically in my gradebook. So dates are really important. Students, normally in this environment, you will, if you jump into your environment, you actually might have pictures of students, especially if you're at one of our demo schools. But for mine, they just come up as little gray men. I could hover over it and it will tell me who the student is. I'll be able to send them a message, look at their perspective, panorama, and more. A perspective is just a visual, the perspective is kind of that additional information where we'd have notes on students in Maplewood. I'll just go right into it right now. Within the student, I could see she has a particular number of incomplete assignments, missing assignments, ungraded. I could actually see different assessments she has coming up in this class, whether they're overdue or not, outcomes that she should be completing. Obviously, she's in my FM10 class. Evidence of learning. This is where we could actually have, when she submits an assignment, it would automatically go in this evidence of learning. I could take her attendance, there's no attendance records, and I can also see previous report cards. So many things are available to you as a classroom teacher relevant to that student. I can also put in information as to notes. So if there is a private note that I want her to or have associated with her account and other teachers aware of, just like we would in Maplewood notes, we can add that in here, and it's private to just the other teachers who are teaching the student as well as the office, but it would not be visible to her or her parents. Within students, I can click on the students. I could see a list of all my students. I could actually also click a QR code, and this would allow a student, if they had the mobile Edsby Capture app, to be able to scan their code and upload evidence of their learning. So whether it's a problem on a worksheet or a final project, they could take a picture of it and submit it. If they scan that code, it will go automatically to their evidence of learning. If you need to print out a class roster, you could do that as well. But there's a neat little feature we just added on the right-hand corner where you could message only the parents of the class or parents and students of the class, and permission forms. So you could actually send out permission forms from the class. All you do is just add in the place. This is going to all the parents, and you can send that directly. There's no actual paper copy needed. It will all be housed within the app. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about getting students and the parents' environment into the environment. Some of the schools are actually already testing that, which is great. We will be using this as the mode of delivery for report cards and all the assessments. So as you'll go through, you'll see that our report card is pretty minimal. I can just go to it right now. I'll preview the students. This is what the report card will look like a little bit. We're making changes to it right now, actually, but you'll be able to see the learning behaviors, comments, absences and lates, and the overall mark. So quite limited, but when you actually go into what's available for each student, you'll see significant more as far as what they have available to them. And I'm going to show you that now. One of my other test accounts, a different teacher, my English teacher. I'm going to go into the perspective because I've done a lot of marking in this course. You can see other visual indicators as to how students are achieving. So this is the perspective. This will show all 20 students' achievements per all of my assignments. So obviously some that should stand out to you are down here. I could see that this Felicia bombed her final exam, 8%. So that's something I would definitely want to follow up on. Down here as well, Linda didn't even do it, as well as Yule here. So that's interesting, and it will help us give one perspective. You'll also be able to do that with outcomes. Oh, sorry, I didn't associate my outcomes yet with that class. Or I can look into a more of a specific view. So that Curtis, who's in both my classes, I can get a sense as to, well, he's got no incomplete assignments, no upcoming. I have one that I've yet to grade or release the grades for, but I have 12 graded assignments, and the students has 97%. I can kind of go through. Curtis's lowest mark here is an 8 out of 10, and I can get a pretty good visual indication as to how he's succeeding. You will also be able to see down here if the student has any absences or lates. That would also be visible. I'll see if I can. I think I have. Abigail might have some absences. Yeah, so it would look like this, absences and lates corresponding with the date. So the larger the circle here, the more that assessment was worth. So something like this at the failing grade, and it's quite a large bubble, might be something that I might want to follow up with that student with as well. Okay, so that's a little bit about the perspective, just different areas within the class. But what I want to actually do now is go through setting up our gradebook for the first time, or setting up our classes. And I'll just kind of reference back to where we are. In this document, we'll go to the class setup right now. So I've already logged in, so you won't get some of these you will get these intro windows that I won't be showing because I've already gone into the environment. But what we'll do is go through the class setup for the first time with some of our teachers. Okay, so we will pretend that, I think this one, I don't have anything in. So if you've logged in for the first time and clicked on any one of your courses, it will look like this. You will see your name here as opposed to two teachers, but there might be an opportunity where you want to add in another teacher, and we can do that by going through the class setup. So on the top right-hand corner, there's a drop-down, and there is a setup tab. Again, all this is gone through step by step in the guide I have provided for you. But once we click on setup, you'll get several different options. And I would suggest that you go through a class setup at the start of every semester with every class, just to make sure it's set up how you want it. So for example, my formal name might not necessarily be super relevant to me. As you've seen, that teacher has 4 Foundations of Math 10 classes. So I might want to personalize that by just going FM 10 period 3, something like that. Short name, you don't need to look at. If we take a closer look, though, at these class options, students can either enter the class and participate. So if you want them to be able to come into the environment, make contributions, to post things, absolutely make sure that's on. Parents can see the class, but only the teacher's post, and that's how I would have it recommended. It doesn't mean they can see the different assessments. They can basically see a very limited view of your course, basically just the assignments that you've posted. Quite helpful there. Showing the average to parents and students, I would say for right now, don't show, because that might actually calculate some of your formative assessments, or it might not give you the overall picture of a student's assessment you're trying to convey. But on the other hand, on the right-hand side, this is for you. showing the averages in the gradebook in perspective, you'll absolutely want to be able to see that because most of our courses are set up in a way that we understand how percentages would reflect in a student's assessment. So if you change this to don't show, you will not get a running tally as to their percentage mark in your gradebook. That's one thing we've run into a few different times. Grade scheme, you just leave that. You don't need to change any of that either. Hide the assessment weighting from students and parents. I'll leave that, show in the class panel. So those, you can just follow the guide here as to what I've suggested. If you'd like to learn more, you can absolutely click on the bottom, and they have an option here. I'm just going to go to it, where it will go through this in depth as well as provide greater explanations as to all those different areas. So if you ever want to know more, it's usually always available on that one page, quite easy to follow as well. Definitely also check that you have the correct outcomes related to that course. I know from looking at this curriculum, these are all correct. If they're not correct, please make sure to reach out because we're still working through some of those glitches to make sure they have the right outcomes associated with the right courses. If you are a practical applied arts teacher, know that this will be one of the first times where we will get a scope and sequence for all the classes and survey courses being taught in our division and have them associated with your courses. That's something we'll be working on very hard over the next few months. They're not in the environment yet, but we have somebody that's going to be helping us with that work right away. So that's going to be one big change. In previous environments, I know myself with photography, I had 60 outcomes listed for all my different photography classes, and it wasn't very relevant or easy to use. So we're going to be making sure that this is very helpful for you. The teachers and assistants section. So for example, we have 2 teachers in here right now. I can actually remove one of the teachers if I want, or I can type in the name of any other teacher, and I can't remember, Galler, I think I have another teacher. If you just start typing in a name, this is synced into our Active Directory, and it will be able to pull up any teacher, and you can add that person as a teacher in the course. You can also add in support teachers or substitute teachers as well. I don't know that you would necessarily want to add a substitute teacher in unless you're maybe on an extended leave or maybe they were taking over for a week or something like that. But a support teacher, like an EA, that might be very handy. So, or if you just need support, one thing I'm going to show you that'll be quite handy is, let's say I am a math department head and I want to make sure that I have consistency among all my math Foundations of Math 10 courses. I can actually create the course, add all my teachers into it, and they can copy the course, meaning they can copy the units, the assessments, the gradebook, everything, which could be quite handy. Or if I'm a new teacher in a department that I'm not very familiar, I could actually have another teacher in that environment and they could help me, whether it's helping me weight my gradebook or potentially even up to and including posting in assignments. So quite a bit of functionality with this tool. Obviously, any of these teachers added in as a teacher will have the ability to do things as you would in the class. They would be able to post things, they would be able to make comments, they would be able to affect your grade book and report cards and whatnot. So not a bad idea to look at maybe adding people into your course if it's relevant. I would say if you have somebody in your department that you work quite closely with, it might be worthwhile to share each other's classes to make sure that you're kind of on par with how you have things set up. So that's another area in which we are getting a lot of questions. Some of you actually are in co-taught classes, which is awesome. And as of next year, that will auto-populate into the environment. This year, we ran into an issue with some of our classes where they are set up as co-taught classes, but we only had one teacher. And it's because they were pulling information from the old Maplewood system and it wasn't jumping over. So many of the issues we're having this year will be solved by moving to this new My School Sask SIS later on. If we're following along, we've kind of gone through all of these settings, which is great. And now we're actually into building our course, adding our units. And the easiest way There are many different ways to kind of add content into your courses, but the best way I find to make everything work out the way you should is to start off in your content area. And the content area is in, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. It should always be in the bottom left-hand corner of your main class. If you want to play around in different classes, you can always click this drop-down arrow. And if, for example, I wanted to play with period 1, go to my content area, you can see this is one I pre-built. So Foundations of Math 10, I have all my units here, measurement trig, all the way up until systems of linear equation. You can see I've also added in a midterm unit and a final exam unit. I did that because of the way this feeds into the gradebook. You don't need to add those, but you can either way. There's essentially 4 different ways to do the exact same thing. So I've tried to do what I think is the easiest way to follow and the one that will lead to the most success for you. So we'll jump back in and we'll essentially kind of recreate this. And I'll show you why we'll do that. I'm going to go to my period 4 class. We have nothing in our content. So this is where you should be starting. Click on content. You'll see it's kind of a blank screen. On the left-hand side, I'll see Foundations of Math 10. Great. I'm going to click on Edit, and you'll see there's maybe a couple new tabs. One is a plus button, and one's a drop-down. So this in the form is actually how you would copy a class. Once I have it built, I would just copy it, and then I could paste it into my other course, and everything's done for me. Also, as I learned out last night, you can delete a course and delete all the content in that course. I accidentally, when I was trying to copy it, I deleted one of my courses and I had a little bit of a heart attack. But under the plus button, there is under the options, you can show deleted and then restore it, which was great to know. And I absolutely guarantee that will happen to probably somebody in this group fairly quickly as we start rolling. So just remember, if you make a mistake, stop, ask for help, but just know that you can restore any of those courses. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to add in a couple units. By hitting the plus button, I'm going to type in my unit 1. I already have that here. It might be relevant to you to not only add the name of the unit, but tag it with the appropriate outcome, because when we click on the outcomes, this little button over here on the side, you will see all the outcomes you have associated with that course. I know with this unit 1, it's measurement. So I'm going to select that appropriate outcome and it grabs it right there. If you want, you can add notes to students. You don't have to. Notes for teachers, that would be for teachers' eyes only kind of thing. So if you wanted to add in some files or links, you might want to copy like a folder to a Google Drive where you might have some resources you want to share with students at a later point. You don't have to though. When I'm done that, I would hit save and you'll see it pop in here on the left. If I were an experienced math teacher and I know, hey, I have in this unit 1, I want to add an assessment right away. You could add an assessment right here as well. So I might do an entry slip. And the type, I can choose several different types. And you can also add a custom type, which is quite helpful. So right now, I would take a really close look as to what's available, because you can weight all of these different options differently. I will show you how to weight in a particular way I think is most relevant, but just know that if you tag specific assignments with different indicators here, as far as if it's an assignment type or an essay or evaluation or homework, it will be able to be weighted specifically. So for this assessment, I actually just want this to be in class work. And I would suggest anytime if you have multiple entry slips, I would always tag it with that same type. Again, with every assignment, you should be tagging the appropriate outcome, hit done. Always remember the due date if you have that available. You can change this at a later time, but if you have the assignments dated correctly, it will make your life significantly more easy moving forward. The type of assessment, I want it to be out of a summative assignment out of 100. This is one of the little nuances that bugged me the first time I was playing in the environment. Whatever you type as your out of section will actually also be the exact same as your weighting. So In the past, I would have just selected a weighting of 1 because that's kind of a factor of which I'm more familiar when working in a previous gradebook. It doesn't matter, and I'll show you why it doesn't matter, but whatever you do, keep it consistent. So if you're always changing the weighting to 1, perfect. If you want to always leave the weighting equal to the total of your summative assessment, so be it. Just make sure they're consistent. The nice thing about this though is once you've jumped into the gradebook and weight, you can actually see what every single unit is weighted, every single assignment is weighted, and you can change that later on in the course. That being said, as you go into a course, you should have a really good understanding of several things. The course, obviously, the outcomes associated with that course, how you'd want that weighted, whether you're weighting by units. You also can create outcomes that will be weighted differently as well. So I could have, instead of creating 10 units, I can actually just create each of those 10 outcomes. Those outcomes would be in my gradebook, and I can associate different assignments with those outcomes as well. So I can do like a true outcomes-based assessment if I'd like, or if I want to have additional things, like if I want to have all my units plus a final exam or portfolio, I can weight those separately as well. I'm just going in here, I'll hit save, and you'll see it pop up under my unit. I'm going to go back in, hit unit 2. Perfect. Nothing I need to know, it just drops in right there. Again, the more information you can give it, the better it will be moving forward. So you can see there, Unit 1 has a lot more information than Unit 2, and it's going to make my life a little easier moving forward. So if I'm done that, I'm just going to go to the close editor, and you can kind of see here, if I click back on the class itself, it will show that I have some content now in the bottom left-hand corner. I can always just click on class here as well. I'll zoom out just a little bit. So you can see the content is here. If I wanted, I can copy and paste this into another class. Obviously, I might wait till I'm completed to paste that into another class. But going back to the step-by-step tutorial, I've shown you all this. I've actually created in one of my other classes the complete course. So this is kind of what I've done with the math, and I hope math teachers, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe these might be relatively okay as far as how you might set up a course, as well as just throwing in a midterm and final in there. Now that we have kind of the content areas, the buckets, we're going to go into the gradebook and see how that looks and adjust the weighting. So again, step by step, I'm going to walk you through it, and it's all available for you in here as well. So I'm in my appropriate class. I'm actually going to go back to my period 1 class, which is the same class, but I already have quite a few more things in the environment, so it'll make it show up a little bit nicer for you. Once you've created that content, you can click on Gradebook. Previously, this gradebook would have nothing in it. Right now, because I've added all those items and I've added correct dates, it has organized them chronologically. You might also up here be able to click on reporting periods. So for example, if you have a year-long class, this might only show what's in the reporting period from September to November, or November to January, or semesters or midterms, however your department or your school sets that up. I prefer to look at the unit view. I feel that this is like the more complete view. You could see here that there's going to be an overall average or arithmetic mean. I can actually change that to different modes of assessment, whether it's the median or the newest calculation as well. So there's some different options here. But looking at this, I could see my units are color coordinated, which is quite handy. They're listed chronologically because I've set the due dates chronologically. So for example, in my unit 3 here, I have things due January 31st, and moving a little bit farther, you'll be able to see that some of my assessments, my final exam is on the last day of the month here. And I will also be able to associate all my outcomes. You'll be able to see here my final type is a final exam. So once I've gone into the gradebook, this might already be overwhelming. I would definitely suggest not necessarily building out your entire course, but adding in maybe 1 or 2 units with 1 or 2 assignments to be able to kind of give you a sense as to how to build this. In the gradebook, one of the first things you should do is on the top right-hand corner, click on the gear and the edit weighting. I know you'll probably want to go into the gradebook setup, but you really will not need that. Everything we'll be doing is already covered in the weighting. So this is the weighting for the course. We have weighting buckets, and as a default, it will throw everything into this everything else category. Everything else in the course, which is 20 assessments, I can click on that and see all my assessments, are worth 100% of the course, which is great. I could actually go in here and see how much everything is worth, and I can tell you right away that this final exam probably should not be worth 75% of the total class. I could see some issues here. An entry slip with a weighting of 10 said it was worth 7.6% of the grade. So already I can tell that this is kind of out to lunch. This is not correct. And I would actually suggest that we never use or rely on this everything else category. We should always be weighting in buckets. So if you've followed along, you've created your units in your content area, uh, it will be very, very easy for you to do that by clicking in, choose what's in this bucket, go down to units, and it's going to pull in all of our units that we've created, as well as all of the assignments that are associated with those units. So it's all done for you if you followed the steps, which is great. So right now, under my units category, I have 20 assessments. My aggregate method I can change for either the mean, mode, latest, or highest. For many of you, I would suspect that would be the mean. And I can add particular weighting to all of these different units. So this is where you should have a conversation with your departments, and right here, if you're following along, and determine what is the value or how would you like your courses weighted. I would suggest that if myself and let's say Gary Augustine are teaching math, foundations of math 10, we should maybe sit down with each other and say, how should we have these weighted? Do we have a standard weight for a midterm and final? And are we adding in any other area that we'd like weighted? And we should be on the same page. This is absolutely something you should be working on at the department level. And this is where, when I work with admin, to support teachers, one of the first things they can do to kind of see how advanced our gradebooks are is jumping into that weighting. And if a teacher has 20 assessments and everything else, and they don't have anything weighted in buckets, I would suggest that's something we need to kind of be able to support and work on as well. Again, where I've set these up to units, you could set that up to anything. It's all built into our content area. If I knew I wanted to set up my course with 10 outcomes, I could just name where I've named units, outcome number 1, FP 10.3, etc. And as we create assignments, we just select that unit and it will auto feed into that area. So right now, my grade book, if I look, obviously I have 20 things, but you can see in the everything else category, I have 0 assessments, which is awesome, except right now it's set up as 100% of the weight of the course, which is probably not the greatest. So what I would do is, I know after sitting down with my department, my final exam is worth 25% of the grade. Go to my midterm. I know my midterm was maybe worth 15% of my grade. And you can see here I have 60% to work with in my other areas. Obviously, I have 7 units, so that doesn't quite work out mathematically. So I can just start adding in some numbers. 8 will get us pretty close. Again, this is something, the more work you do before you jump into the environment, the easier it will be. And I added actually a portfolio in here as well. So 4%, I'm going to actually add that into my, you know what, I'm going to leave portfolio, but I want that added into my unit 7. It's a very heavy unit. Perfect. So I could tell at the bottom, it's 100%, nothing's in everything else. Right now, you could see that I don't have anything yellow. So for example, when I had this first area as yellow, it will say this bucket contains assessments, but no weight. So it's letting you know that there's something you might want to fix. I'm going to add that weight back in. And now I can see everything I have within that unit. So within the unit, I have a unit exam and an entry slip. Based on the weighting, when you created those assessments, it's going to automatically weight your gradebook. So I could tell you, and I'm sure you can guess, that an entry slip should not be worth 7.3% of a course, while the unit exam is worth 0.7. So I might actually switch that around. Again, I can equally weight those two things if I wanted. Then they each become worth 1 or 4%. But this, I would say, might be more realistic. So my unit 1 is worth 8% of my grade. Going through here, I've changed the weighting, which allows me to delineate or differentiate the evaluation of a unit exam to my entry slip. And I would probably just go down the list again, making sure that my units are quite relevant. So this unit, Trig, has additional assessments, whereas I might not weigh so heavily on my unit exam. I might be comfortable with this, or I might have to change the overall weighting of that entire unit. And I can kind of go through that entire list. But what's really nice about this weighting area is you can look at it at any point in the course, and I would definitely suggest you do that quite regularly to be able to make sure that something is not out of whack. And as you can see here, okay, I'm pretty happy with this. I can always add in assessments and change things after, and everything looks good. So I'm just going to hit save. Perfect. So now when I go in, I could check out that weighting again. I have weighting buckets of my units. Everything's in there. It looks perfect. I'm happy with that. If I wanted to choose another bucket, let's say, outside of my units, let's say I specifically wanted to give a mark for a lab. I could add a unit of lab, or sorry, I have a lab in there. I'm going to choose one I haven't selected already. I'm going to go to choose a new bucket. Let's say, homework. If I've told my students that I'm having a particular amount associated with homework, I can create that homework strand. Right now it has no assessments, but I can say that's worth 10% of my course. Already you'll get a couple warnings. This bucket has a weight, no assignments. You'll also see that the course can't exceed 100%, so I'll have to take that out of somewhere else, which will be probably this previous area. So you can always add things in, and what's really nice is you can also add custom areas. So for example, where I said before there's assignments, entry slips. Entry slip is actually one I've custom created. If you want something in here, for example, like a portfolio, and you don't see it, you can add it by clicking custom. So if I click on custom, I can just type in like portfolio. Do I want it associated with a unit? Well, if I weight my gradebook by units, it will actually pull into one of those categories, and I don't want that. So I'm going to create a new unit. I've already created one here called portfolio. The type will be what pops up. And I would just type in portfolio and the outcomes. If I want it associated with all the outcomes of the course, I can click on the main one, FP10, and it will show everything. What's really cool here is the green check marks. So I can tell that all the assessments I have in this class have been covered. So it doesn't tell me how many times they've been covered here, but by the green check mark means I have already associated one of these outcomes with at least one assignment. So anything that stands out as maybe like FP 10.10, if I didn't have a green check mark there, I would know that I do not have that covered in any of my assessments, and that's something I might need to follow up on quite quickly. If I hit done, I could schedule that. I can also change the type of assessment from formative to summative. Primarily, I think many people are working with summative, and the schemes. So we have different schemes here. We have an out of, so if you want it out of 100, out of 10, out of 50, you can select that. If I have out of, I could put in, say, 45. Again, that weighting will pop up. You choose whether you want to leave it that number or change it. But whatever you do, make it similar to the other ones you've done. Keep it consistent. You could also hide it. And a nice thing here is, let's say I'm teaching Foundations of Math 10 more than once. I can click on sorry, I zoomed in there. I can click on cross posting, and I can actually click and add that to all of my Foundations of Math 10 courses. And that will, I'm not going to do that though, that will actually add those assessments and that category into all of my other classes, which is awesome. So that's how you would add a custom assessment. Sorry, I'm just going to get out of here and jump into a few other things. If we go back to the weighting, custom buckets, that's essentially what I've just run over. How to add a custom bucket, adding in assessments. I just copied the exact same thing. And as always, I would say go back in and edit the weighting, double check that you've added the appropriate weighting terms for that course. So different forms of assessment, that's where you might want to manipulate it a bit. So if I understand that my step one is to go back into my content area and create my units, I could just as easily replace those units with something else, whether it be outcomes, or potentially I could set up a course in an entirely different fashion. So this course is set up quite traditionally. I've gone into my weighting. I've made sure my 20 assessments are categorized. I have it set up by units. I have a few exceptions here with my final, my midterm, and a portfolio. Everything adds up. I'm really happy with this. But if I wanted to choose a different form of assessment, I'm just going to go to a different course and I can go to edit weighting. And right now I have only one assessment in this course. It's worth 100%. That's probably inaccurate. I might want to set up my buckets in a way that's maybe a little bit more traditional. So if I've told in my course outline, my assignments are worth 20% of my course, I can choose another bucket. My quizzes, I've also told my students are worth 20% of the course. You see here how it automatically changes everything else category to 60. I can keep on going until I'm happy. So let's say final exam. I've also told my students, well, that one's a big one. It was worth 25% of my course. Assignments, quiz, let's see what else here. Homework, let's say that's worth 10% of my course. And maybe project, again, 10%. Perfect. Now we have 15, and that could be a lab. I'm going to have worth 15% of the course. So right now, here's a different way of setting up your course. I have all these different areas. And again, you can always make a custom bucket, right? So if I wanted, instead of this saying assignment one, I could add in a portfolio. I could add in entry slips. I could add in Kahoot quizzes. I can do whatever. As long as you're able to add a new custom bucket, you could add that into your gradebook. You could weight it anything you want. Be sure to save it. So right now I have a warning. The weight of something is not correctly set. So I might go into the edit weighting again. I could see here I have an assignment, an entry slip. So I have to tell the entry slip where to be. And I can click on the assignment. This is my entry slip. I can see it's associated with my first unit. I can click on my edit. And right now I had it associated with units, but right now I'm not actually assessing that unit specifically. I'm wanting this in classwork, but really I wanted an area of assignment. My outcomes are good. It's out of 100. My weighting I want to change. I'm going to hit save. And if I go back into my gradebook of the weighting, you'll see that that is no longer a warning down here in the everything else category, but it's now moved into my assignments bucket. So I could see right now, because I have no other assignments, it is worth 20% of the final grade, which obviously probably would not be inaccurate assessments of the student's overall ability in your course. So something to take a look at. Let's go into how to create a assignment right from scratch. Another thing too, what I find is not very intuitive. Once you've clicked on an assignment, this shows you the assignment view. You could discuss it, you could have a score, you can have a comment. And what's incredibly important for people to know is the share button. Earlier, when I said that we will open up this environment to students and parents, as soon as we open the environment, they will see in Foundations of Math 10, the teacher has created an assignment called Assignment 1 Entry Slip. They have assigned it a due date. And as of right now, I don't have a grade for it. And let's just say I'm going to add in a grade. of 90% because it's out of 100. I could use this just like any other Excel form. I can kind of autofill those grades and kind of change my outliers. Perfect. You can also add in a status. What's really nice about this status is it will alert a student. So for example, if I did not have a grade for Mark, I could add a status of overdue. And what that does by adding that status of overdue is it alerts Mark and Mark's parents that he has an assignment that is overdue. So another way of kind of keeping track on people, you could also do not done, excused, and you can also drop from average, which might be an accommodation you make for that student. So you don't necessarily need to go in and do the submitted on time, but that's something that's available to you. So these do affect different things in the course, which can be quite handy. I'll go through here and add in, oops. You'll also get a warning too. So for example, if I have 121, which is obviously a mistake, you'll be able to see this asterisk saying, or exclamation point, the grade has been flagged, it's out of range. And right now we're actually going to make sure that nothing is allowed over 100 because there's nothing that should be in a grade book that's out of or higher than the value determined. So bonus marks, again, we're following all the recommendations from our student assessment handbook as far as best practice, and best practice should tell you that there's no such thing as a mark above 100%. Okay, so I'm going to make that change. Oops, sorry. We'll say Mark did great. He got a 95. Perfect. And you'll see that it has the average here. I could see the total average of my class, drop students as well. Right now, none of these students know what they've received on their assessment. It's only until I click the share button that would be shared with those students. So if you see that the share button is white, that means it's shared with parents and students. If I made a mistake and I didn't mean to share that, I can click it and it will turn blue again. Make me a liar. Here we go. It will turn blue, meaning the students have no access to see that mark until you are comfortable with that. So if I go back to my period 1 class, of which I have many assessments, scroll to the bottom, you could see here, obviously I don't have too many marks in here, but I have not shared these with any of the students. So that might also be something I suspect will be coming as far as a recommendation at the division level or the school level, or perhaps even department level. If I have a unit exam, there might be a certain expectation as to how long before it's realistic that I should share that assessment with the student, whether you have something personally, whether it's a few days or maybe a week, whatever's reasonable, and that should be kind of discussed at your department level. And likely your administration might have something to say about that as well. But at the end of a course, all of these should be shared, in which case the student would be able to see what they have in a particular grade. So I know many of you are also wanting to know, what does this look like for a parent or a student? So I'm actually going to log out and I'm going to log into my student account, and you will see exactly what it looks like for a student. Very similar. So I could tell there's some warnings here. I have some things that are overdue, my entry slips in classes. I have my calendars. I could see 32 things are missing from this class. My portfolio, I don't have any groups. Lots of information here. If I click on my class here, I could see all of the assessments that this teacher has associated with me. I could see the other teachers in the course. I'm actually going to go to my English class. My English class actually has some assessments. So if I went into my work, I could see my grades. So in this class, the teacher has shared every assessment. There's 13 graded assessments, and I can see my performance. I had a late that day. My parent would also get this exact same view. So I could see these different ones. This one looks like an outlier, so I might go to my teacher and look at potentially how I might be able to improve that mark. Again, the bigger the bubble, the bigger the value. Also, I could see the assessments themselves. Sorry, it just takes a minute to load up. It will see every different mark on every different assessment, and the parent's view looks almost identical. I know we're running low on time, and I want to have some opportunity for questions. Um, I will absolutely open that up to you here very quickly. Essentially what this is doing is it's just going to show you every one of my assignments because I haven't loaded it for the student. It's taking a long time. What I want to do though is show you Andrew's mother's account to show you what it would look like for her. Parent. Really good questions as to how can a parent or student log into this environment. The students will log in the exact same way as the teachers by clicking the Office 365 button, not logging in with their account. I know that account information will cause them some frustration. Share that with them. Parents will be invited into the environment, and it's nothing you have to do. They will be invited to log in with an account that they already have. So if you've been familiar with like a website that says like sign in with Google, you can click on that and it will associate your account with that email. We are no longer as a division providing emails to parents for this environment. That means we also don't need to reset their passwords, etc. They will also be able to not only view the assessments in the course. So for example, Mr. Galler's class, I could see the content. I can see the things Mr. Galler has assigned to my student, but I actually want to see what my student has done as far as assessments because they have been shared. I'm just going to go back to the main page and I'm going to click on the my work and I will be able to see the exact same graph from the parent view. So I could follow up saying, you know what, you bombed project French unit. Let's see what we can do to maybe correct that. I can also click on the outcomes. That loaded quite quickly, and I can see all these different assignments. I don't really get an in-depth view as to those assignments, but remember, the only reason I can see these is because the teacher has shared them. The teacher has absolute control over what a parent and student sees. If, as the teacher, I'm not comfortable with sharing many of these, like for example, my final exam, I simply do not click the share button. It's as easy as that. I also will be able to see that this student is actually associated with a few different courses, and I can see the outcomes they've completed. So in these different courses, I could see the blue, what they've been assigned and what they've completed. So that will let me know that a course has been significantly completed, as well as my students' achievement on those. Attendance, I've received a few different attendance that the parent has control of. This will also be an app where we will schedule absences. Currently, there's a different app teachers or parents are using. If I want my student to be absent today, I simply in the app click on the name of the student. If I have more than one student at more than one school, I could actually also select an absence for all of them. I could select personal, add a comment if I want, and send that to the office. That student would then register on the office's attendance as absent today. Or if I want to schedule an absence, maybe we're going away February 3rd. Perfect. Give a reason, vacation or school. There we go. Select that properly and send to the office, and they would receive that assessment. What's nice is a parent could actually also see that there's messages. So a request has been given. This would be something I could see my messages as a parent I've submitted, so I can double check that those are actually confirmed. As well as what's really handy is the calendar. So anything that my student is associated with will be in my calendar. So I can follow up with my students saying, hey, it looks like you have a midterm exam on Tuesday, February 9th, and I can view more. And all it tells me is it's under 100, it's a due date, it's a midterm. I should make sure that my student's aware of that. We can use this at the elementary level, the high school level. We could also include anything that the school says is important, like spirit days, color days, any particular day, but also any of the groups. So if Andrew is my student and I have him in football, The football schedule can be posted, and it's only going to show up to Andrew's calendar and my parent calendar as Andrew's parent. So we don't need to have a calendar with every listing of every activity that's ever existed. We can keep it specific to that student. And we're also going to be showing parents how they can sync those calendars with their personal calendars, either their calendars on their iPhones or calendars on Microsoft phones or anything like that. There is an app as well. Um, if you want to use the app, the first page you're going to go to when you download Edsby app, it's going to ask you what is your server. You just type in GSCS, and then you'll be able to click on that O365 button as well. So I'm going to open it up for questions, but just to remind you, obviously, this is the first time many of you have ever seen this. It was a deep dive into many of the things you can do. Just knowing the things that we are going to be asking you to do moving forward and the things that we will be doing to provide support. So this was honestly the first kick at the cat to share Edsby with people outside of those pilot schools. This was our first opportunity to share kind of the things you could do. And actually, even for some of those pilot schools, we have not shown the different ways in which you could actually create the grade books based on the contents. So that's kind of a new development for that. And moving forward, we're going to have other areas of training in which we'll support you in. Specific for high school, we have a PLD on May 21st. That has already been blocked specifically for high school training. So that will be the first in-depth training into high school, of which all high school teachers are required to be in attendance there. We've also blocked some time at the end of June. We don't know which day, but we always know that there might be a day or so at the end of June to provide some training. I will do additional training as we learn more. And then again in August, as we come back, we will be fully in this environment. We will not have access to Pinnacle. We will not have access to Maplewood. We will be in Edsby. So we will also have some in-depth training, as I know many of us are not thinking about Edsby over summer. But I'll be doing a significant amount of training as well. Moving forward with some of our resources, though, always take a look at the resources we have available. This, where did I put it? The Edsby resources app right here, Edsby resources, will be very helpful. And this will be one, just like the Google resource hub, that we will be developing constantly. Now that we're in kind of an environment that's a little bit more stable, we'll be actively building this out quite quickly. I really like this Edsby teacher playlist. Many of these will take you back to the website themselves, but just know any video created by Edsby isn't necessarily specific to our environment. We have made a ton, I'm going to share my screen again, sorry. We have made a ton of, ton of changes to our environment to make sure that they're reflective of our practices. One thing I didn't go over, it's because it's not working beautifully in this environment, is we have the ability to use the high school achievement scale. So our alpha scale, whether it's P, E, etc., we've associated all those with the correct percentages. So as a scheme, you can actually suggest, I may not want to use my out of or percentage scale. I want to use the high school achievement scale. That high school achievement scale will be used. You cannot combine units. So for example, if I added a high school achievement alpha scale, I can't put in 60%. You have to use the scale that you've chosen. So if I've chosen to use an alpha scale, you have to continue on with an alpha scale. The similar with the percentage scale. If I've chosen it to be a percentage, I can't add in P plus, which I know would give me a specific grade, but it will not provide that for me moving forward. So I know this was probably overwhelming. I know this was many things coming at you quite quickly, but essentially what I've done is go through that teacher document. I will be updating that. That is kind of a work in progress. And that's kind of it for me. So if you have questions, I will be monitoring the chat. Feel free also if you're kind of with a group of large people or just want to unmute and show me your video, I'd be happy to stay and answer questions as long as you want, but also feel free to take off. I will post this recording under that portal guide as well, and you'll be able to access that. Questions?